Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Matt Martin with us. He's co-founder and CEO at Clockwise. Make time for what matters. This podcast is presented to you by podpire.com. If you want to start or scale your own podcast, you can go to podpire.com. Matt, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and Clockwise.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charles. Little bit about myself. I am a software engineer. I mostly do front end work, but for the last about 7 years, I've been leading a startup called Clockwise. Clockwise is a calendar utility that helps you make time for what matters. It automatically frees time up in busy work schedules. We work with some of the best companies in the world like Netflix, Uber, Pinterest, Atlassian to help them and their employees free up more time for productive work and make sure that they have a balanced and sane schedule. Let's see a little bit more about me. A fun fact: I used to be an attorney before I turned to software, but those days are long past. Just don't ask me for legal advice.
Did you get any valuable skills that you transcended to your founder career from your lawyer career?
I get asked this question every once in a while, and I'd love to give you a response that's like, it's been great for negotiating deals or for reviewing contracts, but the skill set, I don't know, man. I don't use it much at all. I think it taught me how to work hard, pay attention to details, and keep digging. But other than those kind of soft skills, I really don't use it that much at all anymore.
Or maybe it motivated you to go for a more passionate career, just like my hate for school pushed me to want to start my own school. So maybe there's some of that.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, like I got into law actually because I was involved in political spheres, in political campaigns and public policy, all that sort of stuff. Ended up going into law because I thought I'd work in government or work for a campaign or something. Came out the other side, ended up being a lawyer, and I was sitting in my office and looking around like, what the hell am I doing with myself? And so there was inspiration for that perspective to bail and go back to my first love, which was computers. I've always been kind of a hacker, grew up on the early web. I just love this stuff, love building great product. And so made the transition into startups and the startup ecosystem and just never look back.
You are also a producer of various radio shows. Is that why you accepted the invite
Oh
to this
man,
podcast?
that's taking me way back. Yeah. I mean, it's fun to get back in front of a mic these days doing podcasts. It takes me way, way back. But out of college, I was working on campaigns and I got sucked into this job producing some radio shows. It was only for about, I don't know, a year, maybe less. But it was fun. I mean, with much love. I love that station. I love those people, but Rinkadink AM station in Minnesota. Yeah, it was interesting to say the least.
And then you had two startups under your belt before you actually started Clockwise. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, my path was always just kind of tinkering and continue to follow my interests. There's as we already touched on, there's kind of the academic pursuit and the professional pursuits along the lines of politics, public policy, law. Uh, but it's interesting how those inverted because my tinkering was always on kind of the web side, the website side, building content. And so in the early days, I had a blog that was focused on Minnesota politics and became quite popular, such that I was able to, I'm using air quotes for those who aren't watching the YouTube, um, scale it in air quotes to a few different writers. I mean, this is a small, small affair. It got a lot of traction in the day, but it was not a VC back scale by any means. Um, and so I built that website. I built it up, built up the writer base, and we got some advertising and some grants to sustain it. It was a lot of fun. That was Emmett Publius. That's one of them. I started another company in the really early days called Imbode, where I this is my first attempt at a software business, and I knew nothing. I really didn't even get it off the ground, but It was again just the pursuit of my interests and where I like to spend time. And in Bode was a side project that I was trying to do while I was a lawyer, and that really helped push me to understand that I could make it a career. And that's when I made the jump into software, moved out to the Bay Area, and actually, while in Bode was this side project that I didn't really get up off the ground. I worked with a dev firm. I built it myself with them and kind of trying to get it up off the ground, never got anywhere. But it was really foundational because it helped me understand, it was focused on apartment listings, helped me understand that industry a little bit, helped me get my first job in the Bay Area, helped me renew kind of that passion, understanding what a career in technology might look like. So it's funny, it's just funny how the little things that you spend time on can end up being really, really important to the track you take in life.
Why a another scheduling startup? What problem did you see in the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, look, like I think everybody who's listening to this can probably understand how painful calendars can be at times. And I don't just mean calendar as the tool, whether you're using Apple Calendar or Outlook or Google Calendar, whatever it may be. I don't mean the tool. I mean really the process of getting time for high impact work inside your week and feeling like you're making forward progress. And I think this particularly resonates with folks like myself that have spent time in high pace, high growth industries, or just in large corporations where you're trying to interface with a lot of different people. And so I was at a startup, RelateIQ, intelligent CRM product. We were acquired by Salesforce, and I was seeing a problem in both contexts, both as a startup, and then afterwards we got sucked up in the mothership at Salesforce, huge organization. I saw it again, which is that everybody's trying to take time from my week, whether it's for a stand up or a sync or my manager, or it's, I'm trying to get time with the marketing team, whatever it may be. We're all trying to coordinate our schedules together in order to get our work done. And in the process, you create this kind of like zombie Frankenstein Jenga schedule that's just based on whatever happened to work in the moment. And that leads to a lot of pain. I mean, it led to a lot of pain for me and for my team because you end up having days, weeks where you don't feel like you have time to actually do your job, to actually ship impact, to actually deliver. And so Clockwise was born out of that very deep and personal pain. And with the combination of the realization that from a technology standpoint, we could probably apply basic algorithms and some heuristics to help clean this thing up automatically. There's a lot of data in calendars. There's a lot of information that nobody's making use of. And by connecting to it and understanding it, we can help to automatically clean it up, find better times for everyone, and give everybody a better schedule. And so it's just one of those ideas where, at least for me, and I am a productivity nerd, where you get geared up on it and you're like, how has nobody built this? Like we have to take it.
Is there AI in there? Or it's pure if this and that.
Yes. So both in the older sense and in the modern sense. And what I mean there is that, what we used to call um, ML is, some of that is now AI. And then AI also refers to large language models, LLMs. And so over the years, we've applied many different techniques. We process a lot of information, hundreds of millions of events. We're automatically moving those, and so we have to do that with a high degree of confidence. So in the past, we applied models and machine learning techniques to understand the content of the calendar, categorize it properly, etc. And then today, we're building on top of LLMs in order to really supercharge what we can do. Yet to be released. People can find it at getclockwise.ai or I'm sorry, clockwise.ai or getclockwise.com. Either one of them will get you there. But if you go to clockwise.ai, you'll see that we're building what we believe is a best in breed calendar assistant, utilizing that scheduling engine that we built up over many years through processing hundreds of millions of events and coupling it with modern LLMs to provide a breakthrough experience where you can ask your calendar everything. I mean, you can ask everything, but you can ask your calendar anything and have it actually do it.
So is Clockwise behind people canceling my podcast last minute?
Maybe, could be.
It's like, yeah,
Clockwise
Charles
is
not
just the
important. Let's
enabler, though.
just
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Clockwise is just the enabler. So, if people are canceling on you, Charles, you got something else going on there. You gotta figure that one out.
yeah, for sure. No, it's a fascinating tool, and you've got 40K customers. You've raised a Series C at 76 million. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. It's been an interesting ride. We certainly hit on a resonant pain point. There's a lot of issues that people have in the industry of not getting enough time to spend on impactful work. It's a deep personal pain point, but then it also, it helps it helps organizations and companies on a pretty dramatic basis because of each one of those employees is getting increased productivity. If they're feeling better about their work, that accrues to the benefit of the impact of the entire organization. And so, yeah, we've been lucky to build a product that is resonant on that scale, but then also to partner with some really really great customers to deliver on problem areas that previously were intractable.
So you seem to be product-led growth company. How do you get customers through your door?
It's an interesting question. I mean, yes, we are a product-led growth company, and a lot of it ends up being by word of mouth. The way that the initial kind of seed user gets to our front door, it can be through a variety of means, and it's sometimes a mystery. So we do a lot of work inside the product to help incentivize people to pull other people into the product. So there are direct invites, but it's also a product where Clockwise gets better as you get more of your colleagues onto Clockwise. Because you can imagine if we're working together and you use Clockwise and I use Clockwise, the whole system gets smarter. And then if we add our third colleague, it gets even better yet, and so on and so on. So we bring users in that way, but then I say that some of it is mysterious because we do a lot of work to enable what we call casual contact loops. So these are areas where people might just see Clockwise on somebody else's calendar while they're looking at it. They might see Clockwise through the Clockwise Slack extension. They might see Clockwise because we're syncing personal calendar events. There are a lot of ways that you can be exposed to it, and that might lead you to right away go to our website and download. It might lead you to ask a friend, and might just sow a seed in the back of your head that's like, hey, this thing is interesting. And then later on, you see one of our ads, you're Googling along for a solution, and you're predisposed to click on it. But that initial user comes through largely through word of mouth, and then also through some various campaigns that we'll run.
What are people not taking enough time about nowadays?
I think that a variety of things. It depends a little bit on your career stage and what your job function is. But at a broad level, I'll say that I think people really don't do a poor job of valuing big chunks of time. So if you're looking at your schedule and you're in back-to-back meetings, it can feel like you're doing a lot. It can feel like you're busy. It can feel like you're important. But I would ask you to evaluate how much impact are you really delivering on a weekly basis? Because meetings are very important. They're how we collaborate with our colleagues. They're often how we make decisions. They can be how we get updates, how we get information, but they're not where deep generative kind of value additive work happens. That's often by yourself in front of whatever tool you're using, whether that's a code editor or a Google Doc or just Notepad and a pen, where you're thinking through a deep problem. And everybody needs that, whether you're a manager, whether you're a leader, whether you're an individual contributor, everybody needs some of that in their week. And I think it's very easy to lose sight of how valuable that is. Because even as a manager, where maybe you're in back-to-back meetings, you're like, look, my job is to enable the team. I'm just here to be grease in the system to help make everything easier for everyone else. Even if that's your mentality, you still need time to plan. You still need time to think about what your team needs. You still need time to bite off career development, to bite off weekly planning, to bite off quarterly planning, to bite off what's that next big initiative? Like you need time to think. And so I think that is the largest area that people don't spend enough time on, is just carving out that time to go deep on a problem and really, let yourself think.
You did a podcast some weeks ago, and the title was "No One Likes Meetings." Is it true that no one likes meetings?
um, I think meetings are a really easy enemy because everybody's been to a meeting that's just a waste of time. And I think that unfortunately, the percentage of meetings that we attend that feel like they're a waste of time is too high. And now, for some folks, that might be 50% of their meetings. For some folks, it might be 10%. But regardless of how high it is, everybody has that experience of going to a meeting and be like, why the hell am I here? Why is there no agenda? Why are we wasting time on this? How did I get sucked into this? And so I think meetings become an easy enemy. It almost becomes the punchline of a joke. And that's what that's what the podcast headline is taking advantage of. I think the nuanced answer is everybody hates bad meetings. And I think there are people, and myself included, I'll count myself as one of these, where I have gone into meetings that come out more energized than I entered. That's a really great meeting. I've gone into meetings where my energy is lower, but I know we just accomplished something. We just bit off something that was tricky. That's still a good meeting. And so it's about making sure that you're spending time in the right areas and that you're not just attending the meeting because you got invited. You're not just attending the meeting because, it's a recurring meeting that got put on your schedule 3 months ago. You're not just attending because you're going through the motions. You're attending because you're actually delivering value and it's something important. And I think there is space for good meetings. It's just unfortunately we have too many bad ones.
What are your top three productivity tips?
Top three productivity tips. All right. Um, well, I think my number one is to take time every week to plan out your week. And this doesn't have to be, I think people hear this tip and they're like, oh man, that sounds like a chore. Like I'm gonna have to get like a planner, like I'm gonna have to audit my calendar. And it does not have to be in depth. Just to get started, budget out 10-15 minutes at the start of your week. At the start of a Monday, look at your week, look at your calendar, look at your tasks, and just take a beat to take a step back from the day to day and think of what are the most important things for me to do this week in order to advance my goals. Because I think it's so easy to get in kind of the rat race and forget what your larger goals are. Like you have them listed in your Zoom background, which is awesome. And it's like this week, how am I going to make progress on 100K new followers? What's the big ticket item that I can do this week to drive that forward? And that ritual of planning out your week every week, it makes a huge difference because then you just don't get lost in the day to day. My second tip is kind of a 1A of that because it just builds on that first tip of planning out your week. Take that moment that you do on Mondays, 15 minutes, or do it on a Friday, it doesn't matter. Do it on a Sunday if you want, but take that weekly planning moment and those priorities that you identify, put them in an email and send them to your team. Send them to your boss and your colleagues and say, this is what I'm focused on this week. They'll get some visibility into what you're doing. But the really critical thing is you'll feel accountable because you sent out your list of priorities. And then what you do the next week is you send out a follow-up email and says, okay, here's what I got done on those goals for last week. Here are my new goals for this week. And that helps build the habit in a way that's really, really helpful. Third productivity tip, if you can do it, not everybody can, but if you can do it, try to budget out some time at the start and the end of your day, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, block it off. Could be just do the morning or just do the afternoon. Love doing both because you start the day with 30 minutes where you sit down on your computer, you can triage emails, you can clear out the cruft, you can get ready for the day, and then you end the day doing the same. Get your inbox down, get your tasks organized so that you can actually step away from your computer. And, whether that's at, 5 p.m. or 8 p.m. or 10 p.m., hitting the end of your day with a clear slate and starting the next day with a clear slate, it's a blessing. It's amazing. Like you'll never feel so good.
What do you think about deep work?
Well, It's incredibly critical. I mean, to my earlier point about people not spending enough time with large chunks of time just to think, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Cal Newport is a professor at Georgetown who wrote a tome on this called Deep Work, aptly named. And I think it's a fantastic book. We give it out to every new employee of Clockwise because it's kind of at the core of our thesis at Clockwise, which is that through enabling better schedules and through enabling more time for impactful work, we enable everybody to have a more productive, more impactful, and ultimately more satisfying work week. I think that deep work requires a bit of training. It requires a little bit of reorientation, especially if you've been in this kind of rat race, hop from one meeting to the next mentality. Um, because you kind of have to rewire your brain a little bit to sit there and actually think about a topic, to actually go deep on it. It's a little bit alarming actually when you first do it. You're like, oh, holy shit, like I've lost the ability to think. But it's really critical because that's how you're going to end up not only delivering impact, but distinguishing yourself in your career. Through delivering impact repeatedly through that deep work. That's what separates out the true high performers, and it builds on itself because as you ship impact, you learn what works for you, you learn how to work, and you continue to deliver that impact in a way that separates you out further and further from the crowd. So I think for any professional, it's absolutely critical.
What does your sales team's calendar look like?
uh, Hopefully it's packed with customer calls. um I mean the sales teams needs a bit of time for deep work because again you kind of have to plan out your week. You have to think about the strategies for acquiring new customers. You have to take time to reevaluate that sales pitch deck. You have to think critically about how am I going to put together the story for a customer. I think that's one thing that is lost sometimes in sales organizations, the power of storytelling, because you can inherit a deck that somebody other rep used, and you can just copy paste new charts into it to customize it for the customer and put it in front of them, wash, rinse, repeat. But storytelling can really amplify a sales pitch. If you think about it, you think about what the customer pains are. But look, like at the end of the day, I want to see the sales team's schedules filled with as many customer calls as possible.
What thoughts on this calendar here?
I think you got to switch tabs or switch windows.
Oh, you can't see the Zoom one. Okay.
There we go. There we go. Yep. Now I can see it. I think, man, this looks like a crazy. I mean, I there's a part of me that admires it where it's the like I admire the fact that it's just jammed. But I see a few different things here. Like one of the ones that sticks out with me is that you have Run with Dogs and it's often overbooked with cold email or a via call.
Yeah.
And
I find time for them though daily. Like for example, this spot here in Launch Life is gonna be like, yeah, run the dogs.
that's gonna be Run the Dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we can also lose sight of is how important those rituals are. Like, I'm sure that Run with Dogs time for you, like, it's energizing. Like, it's what gets you back in the flow, like, what adds energy back to your day. And so, if you miss that, it starts to hurt the rest of your day. It's like a workout for me. Um, but yeah, it is jam packed. I wonder where you're getting your time to think.
At nights and on weekends. I recently added like some time off here, some time off at the beginning of the day, so I get my sleep time.
Yeah.
Then this is an attempt to block time into what I should spend my time on, but I end up using it to do other stuff, which is a good sign. It's a real sign that I needed to block out time. Um, I think also depends on your brain, like how much stress you want to impose on yourself and the existing systems and mindsets that you have. And yeah, the type of brain genetically that you have, I think mine's pretty ADHD.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I think that the so the part that I would advise is that if you do have that style where you need to hop to different things and you need to constantly kind of keep in motion, which is similar to myself actually, is that because it I think for both of us probably satisfies a certain part of our brain and a certain part of our genetic predisposition, it feels good. Like it maybe doesn't feel good all the time, but like it feels sustaining. Um, and that can be deceptive because it might not be what's highest impact. You might just be chasing it because like you feel like you got to be in motion all the time. And it took me a little bit to realize that I need to inject a little bit of time to just think about like how am I spending my time instead of running from thing to thing. Um, but again, you're right. I mean, it's what works for you. Ultimately, a schedule, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It just matters, is it doing for you what you need it to do, which is to feel good at the end of the week and to feel like you delivered impact and to feel like you're making forward progress.
Very good advice, Matt. Thank you for coming today. Where can people find out more about you?
I would say first and foremost, go to clockwise.ai. And I'm also finding that I'm spending more and more of my time in terms of social interaction on LinkedIn. As weird as that would have felt 10 years ago, I I feel like there are more kind of substantive conversations about work and what people are doing on that because it's attached to people's profile and resumes. So find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me right away. Just Matt Martin Clockwise and hit me up.